Hello, everyone. Welcome to Libraries in Response. This is session 144. Wow. Of our now 7-year running series since the pandemic. And you're all welcome to be here. And we've got a great lineup today. And well, I just wanted to welcome everybody. So we are the Gigabit Libraries Network. We sorry, I just leaving the screen share. We've been going since 2007 with libraries and technology, libraries innovating with technology, mostly around connectivity, but not only. And connectivity, of course, is important for everything that we do as individuals online and, interestingly, offline. So our partner in this production is the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, based in The Hague, a longtime partner in in universal access. Universal access meaning, at least in our terms, every community has access, which means everyone has access through some kind of community hub like a library. We think that's a universal. I've been working on that for years. Even without the internet, which is how we met Bibliothèques Sans Frontières several years ago at the university library at Arizona State University, around the concept of offline internet. Offline internet sounds like an oxymoron, but what it actually means is that there is access to information, useful information, that doesn't require an active link all the time, or maybe at all. Many places still lack infrastructure. So this is a group that came together to address those situations where there's just no connectivity, or very little connectivity, or unreliable connectivity. And BSF is one of those people, one of those groups. So the solution is to have basically a library, an offline library, with key digital resources like Wikipedia and the Khan Academy. You can do a lot with just those two applications. And, and then you can periodically update and communicate as may be possible, even if you have to copy a thumb drive and ride it on a mule over the mountains. It's still a way to access the world's knowledge, or at least a major part of the world's knowledge. So that's an interesting approach to connectivity. Kind of rounds out the whole array of approaches on how everybody can participate, which we think everybody should be able to participate. Our go-to image, which for some reason I can't share with you, is of 4 crises that have come upon society in the last 7 years. Not only, but prominently, starting with COVID in 2020, and then including the economic crisis that followed that, the social crisis, which is relevant to our topic today, triggered by the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota. That was besides horrific, it was a remarkable event. At the time, it's hard to recall how intense that was. We didn't know how severe this virus was. We didn't know how contagious it actually was. I just reminded this morning that we used to stand out, open the windows, stand out our front door, and hoot for the medical workers who showed up, risking their lives to deal with all the sick people that were, and how that changed, how that dramatically changed after this, not long after this. So after the Floyd murder, people turned out to demonstrate against against police brutality, and they, paraded the streets without their masks on. And so the people who were disinclined to mask or use vaccines took exception with this. Well, why are they out there without their masks on? We have this whole thing about masks, and now it just doesn't seem to matter. So this has all been a fake thing. And that grew and grew into a lot of the political problems that we have today. And political problems is another one of the disasters, crises that has kind of come over the world everywhere. And that whether that's a local demonstration or actual full-blown violence and warfare, it's pervasive, it's growing, as you would all know. And then the latest to this group, not the latest, the earliest probably, is the climate crisis, which is putting pressure on the environmental system, the ecosystem. And my sense is that we all feel that. We're all part of that system. We are of the earth. And if the earth is under stress, we feel that as organisms. Even if we can't directly tie it to the cause, it creates a level of anxiety and frustration, if not fear, that I think is part of what's happening today. Interestingly, of course, the transition to renewables has been accelerated by the effort to block the historic energy sources of oil and gas and coal. So that's hopeful, of course. I mean, the statistics on renewables are really impressive. If you take China out, they're much, much less impressive, but China is sharing this technology. They're reaping the benefits of inventing it, and they've built a whole economy around it. So good for them, good for us, at least to a point. And then the latest crisis, of course, is AI, which is not new in the sense it's been a big part of the back end of systems for a long time, but only a couple of years ago did it kind of break out as an end user tool or an end user platform that people can use. And people have latched onto it for all kinds of reasons. It's exploded, as you know. The investments in the infrastructure to support that are mind-boggling. Tens and hundreds of billions of dollars a year to create the compute platform, the connectivity, the energy required, the water required. These are all risk factors that are really not being addressed that well. It's just the scramble to dominate this new field is overwhelming. And these companies, which were already the biggest companies, are now even bigger and even more powerful and influential, to the point that they pretty much have a free rein in terms of policy and activity. So it's out of balance. This is the historic way that capitalism has worked is that government holds capitalism in check. Capital companies, private companies want to optimize profits. It's just that's just how it says in their charter. And they prefer to dominate markets, if not monopolize markets. That's kind of what you want when you're in business. You want to beat the competition. Well, at a certain point, that becomes hazardous or unhelpful to society at large, and government has to step in and block the abuse of that leverage, that power of monopoly. You know, the most famous example, of course, is Standard Oil at the turn of the last century. And the government stepped in and broke up Standard Oil and busted the trust, as it were, that then kept the oil companies from completely dominating the economy, which they were at that time, calling the shots. Well, they haven't really gone away, but we have new players in that same role, and these are information technology companies that are just incredibly big. That they barely existed a decade ago or 2 decades ago, and now they've got more money than, I don't know, anybody but the oil countries, and maybe even them. So it's a tremendous imbalance where these companies gotten to the point where they can dictate regulation that should be controlling them without their influence. So it's the world we've created, the world we're living in, and the world of AI. But the strife that has come along with all this is alarming. And war, which is included in our image of these various crises, was not seen 6 years ago as a pervasive crisis, though, of course, wherever it is happening, it is a crisis. But generally speaking, it was here and there. Well, now it's kind of everywhere. And the impact of the war in the Middle East touches absolutely everywhere. And actually, war anywhere touches everywhere because it dislocates societies and peoples who are then on the move and crossing borders and just upsetting all kinds of stability and making difficulty. So what does that mean to libraries? How do libraries cope with all this? Well, they just do whatever they can depending on whatever the crisis is. And crises come in all sizes. These I've just mentioned the kind of the global crises, but they come at the state and local and even personal level. So people in personal crisis show up at the library needing help. And the library's there to give it to them, to help them out, whatever you need. We're here to help. That's what we do. And we don't want anything from you. We don't want your pledge. We don't want your money. We don't ask anything. Just let us help you. Ask us what you need, and we'll do our best. And they do. This is outstanding. This is just an incredible compact that we've made with ourselves as a society, provides such a public service, a common good. And it just, not enough can be said about libraries, and not enough is said about libraries. Our job, if I can call it that, is to advocate for libraries and promote libraries as essential services to society and culture, even as they seem kind of quiet and are often confused as non-essential as compared to the fire department or the police department or the ambulance as the classic first responders to emergencies. But every day across the board, you see libraries providing services or backup services to the first responders. And so it's especially true that there are groups of people that that lack appreciation for the library. Wealthy people, for one, I mean, they may have a feeling for the library in an abstract way, but you know, they just one click for whatever they want. And the technologists will say, "Oh, libraries are still around? Really? Oh, that's nice." But they don't really care. They think the internet has replaced libraries. It's just not true. It's like every time some new technology comes along, okay, this is the end of libraries. Ebooks, that's the end of libraries. Well, it's not. Libraries persist. They fill in all the gaps and all the unusual requests that happen across the huge spectrum of society that we share. And then politicians is the third group. The third constituency would be very valuable for libraries to have support from. And they do, but only when the community tells them they have to. Otherwise, I think political people are not particularly literary. And as a generalization, I don't want to condemn all politicians, just most of them. And so it's an opportunity for libraries to assert themselves, not an opportunity. We would say at this point in time, it's a responsibility for libraries to assert their role. And AI creates a context for this assertion that we have a unique role to play in terms of how society copes with AI and what it means and how it's guided and trained. All that are things that libraries are really good at. The mitigating the risk related to surveillance and security and risk and social disruption. All of that, the library is there to step in and help. So, with all that said, we're going to turn to our speakers, who, as I say, we met BSF at the offline internet founding consortium at ASU library, and how they do things in places where there's no connectivity. So, welcome to Libraries in Response. Cormac, are you here? Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks for having us. It's a real
Welcome,
pleasure to
Cormac.
be here.
Please take it away and tell us about BSF and what are the things you're doing. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of interest from Africa today that has shown up late in the registration process. So please speak to activity you may be doing in Africa as well. So welcome, Cormac. Welcome, Bibliothèques Sans Frontières.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's as I said, it's a pleasure to be here, and also I'm really delighted to be joined by two of my colleagues, Julie Pinochet and Camille Popkoff. Julie is has been working a lot in Syria, and we're talking about Syria, and Camille is actually in Kyiv in Ukraine right now, and we're talking about our projects in Ukraine. And of course, I'll be delighted to talk about some of the projects we do in Africa, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. But first, if it's okay, if I could just talk a little bit about BSF, because I'm not sure if everyone knows what Bibliothèques Sans Frontières does and who we are. Okay, great. So BSF is an NGO, and then we're really here as our core mandate is to ensure that everyone has access to knowledge and information, regardless of their circumstances, whether it be because they're in a crisis situation or in a war zone, because they're in a developing country and because of economic deprivation or access, because of gender. So we're really here to make sure everyone has access. And we're really conscious of many of the problems. So if we're talking about, say, media literacy and critical thinking skills, for example, particularly in OECD countries, if we're talking about the learning poverty crisis that's currently taking place in sub-Saharan Africa, Also, too, just in terms of gender inequality, particularly when it comes to girls dropping out of school or not having access to education, for example, in Afghanistan. Um, and also, too, about the problems we face with democracy and how people can be citizens that are fully engaged and fully participate in their democracies, because we believe that democracies allow for diversity and for inclusion. Um, so, who are Bibliothèques Sans Frontières? So, we're an NGO that really works with vulnerable communities. And as I said before, vulnerable communities spans a large range of definitions. So it could be people who are in war zones. It could be children who are suffering from trauma because of their of extremely difficult situations. It can be young people in Africa who don't have a degree, who don't have any training, who don't have a job, so economically and socially vulnerable, right? And so what we really focus on is providing tools, content, and support, human-centered support, to ensure that people can get information for training, get information for culture, and also to create connections and come together and really find cohesion in communities and in social groupings. So we've worked with over 2 million people around the world since 2007. We're operating in 20 different countries. About a third of our operations in Europe, and the rest is in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Africa. Also, we have staff across 150 different countries, and we're based out of Paris as our international headquarters. So, Don, you were talking about libraries before, and technology. Okay, so one of our core tools that we use at the moment is the Ideas Box, and the Ideas Box is a mix of analog and digital technologies. So it can be a field library. So it's the kind of tool that could be packed onto to a pallet. So you can see you have 4 boxes, and each of those boxes unfold to be a game center, to be like a workstation, to be a library, to be a multimedia center or a cinema. They can be used as field classrooms. There's about 190 deployed all around the world. Last year, we celebrated the 10 years of the Ideas Box. And as I said before, it's a mix of digital and analog. So we have like paper books, and also we have like digital books. Now, when it comes to digital, and you mentioned offline internet, which yes, lots of people aren't used to or they're unfamiliar with. But in many places in the world, as you mentioned before, the internet is not available. So it's not something we can take for granted. So even in countries where you have high degrees of coverage, where networks and antennas are available, internet can be cut off. If we see in lots of countries now, for example, in the Soviet Union, in Russia, in Iran, and different countries, the internet will be cut off for political reasons. Also, in many countries, even though internet is available, it's very expensive. So, for example, in Senegal, you have regions where you have 90% coverage of internet, but that can drop down to 14% in terms of access, mostly because it's too expensive. So we have this thing called the Ideas Cube. Essentially, the Ideas Cube is a microcomputer and a microserver. And what it does, it allows us to load thousands and thousands and thousands of books, videos, MP3 files, everything that you could find in a Mediatek. And that's loaded onto the Ideas Cube. And that creates a hotspot. And so the hotspot allows up to 15 to 20 different computers or tablets or telephones to connect to this offline library and access the offline library that we have, which is called OLIP, but also to access learning platforms like Moodle, to be able to access downloaded Wikipedia, to be able to access specialized software that we use with partners. Okay. So it's a very innovative tool that we use at lots of places. We also have another way of having kind of portable libraries and ultra portable libraries that can be put onto people's phones. And this is using SD cards. And so SD cards, they have like learning management systems, but also too, it's like an offline library that everyone can have in their pocket. And so we're actually running lots of projects like this. For example, we're running a project in Senegal for teachers where they have like an AI-based assistant and a learning management system with lots of content for their students. And in Afghanistan, we've got these cards where we have the national curriculum, where we've distributed those to heads of household. So it means that girls are still able to access the curriculum, even though they're not able to access school. So as you can see here, we work on a lot of different topics. the common thread through all the projects is really making sure people have access to knowledge, access to information, access to culture. And so we work a lot on education, citizenship and social cohesion, employment, helping people access the labor market, health, particularly health prevention. And we have some like amazing products and solutions about like health literacy, particularly in Senegal, Togo, and Benin, and Ivory Coast. And also making sure everyone has access to culture, because we believe that access to culture, access to education is a fundamental human right and not a commodity. And as you can see here, and we'll be talking more about this, we work with a lot of people who are refugees and people who are currently in zones where they're experiencing humanitarian crisis. And finally, is that we work very hard to make sure that what we do is evidence-based. Evidence-based in terms of at the beginning of our theory change is that what we do is based on solid scientific evidence. And also too, we're very diligent and in terms of running evaluations to evaluate the quality of what we do, but also the impact of what we do. So are we delivering quality activities? But also too, is that do they actually work? And trying to identify the causal chains to see, well, what works, what doesn't work, and why does it work? So when we're talking about innovation, it's not just about offline internet or tools, it's also about social innovation. What is the change in the program that we're able to deploy in the field? And then how did that change in what we do and the activities lead to the social change and the social impact that we hope to have? And as you can see here, we recently ran an RCT or a scientific experiment to demonstrate the impact, particularly in fundamental skills. And we'll be running more evaluations this year as well, which we'll be very excited to share at a later date. And the last thing is that we work with lots of partners. So one of the particularities of BSF is that we work with local partners, right? And so it's really very much a team effort where in all the countries we work in, we'll be working very closely with the partners in the field who really know the beneficiaries and really know the populations and what they need and what they don't need. So that makes the projects even more successful, because it is a real partnership. And just on this slide here, and Camille and Julie will be able to speak more on this, is that just to highlight and thank a lot of partners who have given us their support and their trust. So now, thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it over to Julie, who'll be talking about this like really incredible project that we're working on in Syria.
Thank you very much, Cormac, and nice to meet you, everyone. I hope you can hear me properly.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So I'll try to talk briefly about the project, and then if there's any questions, then I would be more than happy to answer. So this is a project that we've started since November of 2025 with the support of the French Embassy in the suburbs of Damascus, Aleppo, and Sweda, which have been severely impacted by over a decade of conflict. These are particular suburbs where there's limited or unstable access to the internet, to education, and to cultural infrastructure, and where there's a high vulnerability among young people and women, and especially where there's also a lot of refugees and internally displaced peoples who are now returning back home, and it's creating tensions with the host community and the people who have stayed during the years of conflict. And because of the heavy destruction in these suburbs, there's now a lack of sustainable, inclusive places and safe places for people to meet and to rekindle and to rebuild that social link. And this is why we want to support the creation of library spaces. So we're now currently working in establishing 5 of those library spaces and community-based cultural centers. We want to reach 2,500 beneficiaries, especially youth and women, by providing over 4,000 books and digital resources, especially using our offline internet server that Cormac was mentioning before. And the idea is to provide free and open access to learning and information, targeting especially the thematics of psychosocial resilience, using artistic expression and play, using books, using games, to help people overcome trauma. We also want to support cultural activities around memory and identity. As I was mentioning, there's now a lot of tensions and issues around social cohesion. And so those libraries will be the opportunity for co-creation of activities with the communities themselves around exhibitions, theater, music, storytelling, and really focusing on what makes Syria today what it is and what Syria is in terms of culture. And we want those spaces to be really safe spaces, fostering trust and expression and dialogue between everyone. And finally, because we will also be working on access to the digital, we will also work on digital skills trainings, especially for youth and women, including digital inclusion, media and information literacy, and online safety and civic digital engagement. So all of these activities will be provided within the libraries with the support of our local partners, which are Mars, Inara, and DAR. And I'm mentioning them because they're doing incredible work right now. And maybe also to show the pictures of what those places looks like before. And that was actually the first step on our side, is because of the heavy destruction, we had to rebuild those library spaces. So this is what the Daria Library, which is in the suburbs of Damascus, looks like before and what it looks like today. And now we've also added the books, the games, and the offline service tablets. And in Aleppo, it's the same. It used to be a school, and now we're rehabilitating it with the local partner to have separate rooms dedicated to reading, to learning, to creating, to having access to offline internet for the local community. I don't know if you want me to delve into more details or if there's a time for questions, but this is most broadly speaking what we're doing in Syria right now.
Extraordinary, Julie. How you had barriers going into Syria? The government was open to it. They ignored you. They helped you. What?
So yeah, we've been able to access Damascus and Aleppo since the fall of the previous regime. Before that, we were only in northeast Syria, so in Raqqa and Hasakeh. And to be honest, we've had a really strong buy-in from the authorities from the beginning, because they're really in demand on having those places rebuilt. The reintegration of the IDPs and the refugees is a very, very high priority for the new authorities. And because our local partners are also very well connected with the communities, with the local authorities, it's been, I'm not going to say easy because there's always barriers, but it's been a quite smooth process in identifying those places and having that collaboration, just because the needs are so vast and they can see the potential of those places. So they've been quite supportive so far.
Excellent. So what are the principal uses that people come to your libraries for in Syria? Is it internet access? Is it community? Is it books? Is it
I think it's a bit
safety?
of everything.
What are driving most people into the door?
I think it's, first of all, it's having access to a place where they can meet, which is no longer in existence in most of the places because of the heavy bombing that happened during 15 years. So just having access to a place where they can meet, discuss, see each other again, that is already quite huge for them. And then I guess it's having access to resources that they don't have access to today. The cost of internet is very, very, very high right now, and it's not working very well just because of the electricity situation as well. All of our centers are equipped with solar panels or generators to make sure that we don't have that issue with access to electricity. And so having access to offline internet resources that are tailored to their needs, that offer information that they need to have access to, having access to books for children, which is also crucially lacking in most of the places that I've seen, I would say, yeah, is the main potential for the places for them.
Interesting. And so for connectivity, what do you have a principal connectivity resource, or just catch as catch can?
So we're providing both our offline internet server, which people can connect on with their phone or tablets or laptop. And so it gives access to basically a digital library of content that they can navigate onto without needing for paying for data. And in some of the places, we're also discussing and trying to provide what I was going to call real internet. But this is more difficult just because of the prices and the access to electricity. So right now it's mostly offline internet through the server that Cormac was mentioning before, and we provide tablets and laptops with open access for people to use them.
Which are extraordinary. Of course, the ideas box has been around for, I guess, a decade, but the server box is really something extraordinary because the capacity now of units to store immense amounts of data and then to share that on a local network is really impressive. And even the phone access as a hub is you folks are really being inventive about this. So this is a great story, very hopeful, and I'm sure that it's appreciated by the people of Syria who are under such stress for so long now. So I guess we'll turn to Camille to hear about Ukraine, which is more in the news these days, of course. Camille, welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Yes, so the first project is Libraries Under Bomb. So this is a project that happened in the east of Ukraine, in Kharkiv and Donetsk Oblast, in the east, in the frontline area. First, you have to keep in mind that without a decent shelter, the schools are not allowed to open and to receive the children. So it means that for many years, children didn't have access to school at all. They were only attending online classes because we had first pandemic and then the full-scale invasion. So in this project, we operate through a consortium approach. One partner is handling the shelter rehab. BSF provide the educational content and the learning tools, including physical library. And we have local organizations that do the actual work on the field. They are in shelter every day to deliver catch-up classes and social emotional learning for the children. So basically, you have to if you want, you can go to the next slide. So if you want to imagine a school basement, we have some picture because the basement being a basement, it's no natural light, limited heating in winter, and it's not very comfortable. But with this project, we managed to create what we call a hybrid learning hub somehow. So it's this beautiful space with a lot of colors and all of our tools to create, yes, a space for children to enjoy and to learn. In our idea box and ideas cube, we deliver also some content. So we have interactive video, some content, some books, some games, some creative material, and so on, in order to give these classes the material to be here to learn and to have something, yes, to recreate a sense of community somehow. And we receive very interesting testimony from the teachers who told us that the children improve, yes, their reading skill first, but also their socialization, which is very important because you can imagine that these children, some of them only knew basically the war and they have multiple traumas. So being able to come back together, to have a sense of safety, to enjoy learning together and to be able to play again with other children is something very important and something very impactful. I think I have another picture of shelter, and if you have questions on this project, I can answer.
Amazing. So you also draw adults in, no doubt, not only children. Is that right?
We did not. It's the parents of children, so they decided to also. I mean, it's also important for them to have their children in a shelter and not stuck at home. It's also safer somehow. So they did took part in their rehabilitation and in this creative activity with the children. And yeah, it's also creating additional bond. Yeah, I would say.
Okay. I think it was Cormac who spoke about culture as a universal right, and it hits me that culture is something we generally take for granted, because we're sort of awash in it because of the media. But when things are disrupted, we realize how delicate and fragile our societies actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And in a war zone, I'm sure, in any kind of strifes, it feels like the cultural foundation is kind of dissolving. In those kind of moments, I can see how people would turn to the library as a repository of culture. And suddenly it looks much more precious as a place is preserving the culture that's under threat from all the chaos that's around. So
Yeah.
extraordinary
Yeah.
perspective and service.
Yeah, exactly. And if I may complete, Ukraine has a profound right and need to preserve their culture because it's not new that Russian invasion is trying to crash cultural. It started with the USSR, where USSR trying to smooth all the cultural specificity of each country. So you can imagine how important is it for a country to say. We have our Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian culture, libraries, and so on, to say we stay, we remain, we endure, and it's somehow an act of resistance, I would say.
Further, as an act of courage and
Yeah.
inspiration for people to persevere. But you remind me of another circumstance, the Arab Spring, where there was a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction, overthrow of systems and entities that represented repressive governments. In Egypt, they had rebuilt the library at Alexandria, an immense
Mhm.
project, and it was done by, as I understood it, led by Mubarak's wife, and seen therefore as an extension of the Mubarak administration, which of course was really unpopular. And so the people of Alexandria went out and surrounded this immense facility, hand to hand, holding hands around the entire facility, saying, "No, not again. You're not coming here to knock this down. It may have been created by Mubarak's family or whatever, but it's now belongs to the people of Alexandria, and we're not going to give it up. And so just stay back." I thought that really struck me, the idea of, thousands of people holding hands around this immense facility, facing the crowds who just wanted, just to tear down the old repressive symbols. But so we have a question from the Kim, who heads the African branch of IFLA out of Nigeria, uh, which basically gets to the question of for BSF is what do you want from these libraries? What are you seeking? What are you asking for libraries to come to you, and how do they do that? And what are the opportunities and openings for libraries, and especially in Africa, which has a lot of strife going on itself? Anybody?
I guess that would be for Cormac.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think anyone, all three of us can answer this too. But I mean, in terms of Africa, like what are the criteria for BSF being involved? Well, for example, we are present in Nigeria. We do have a project that should be starting soon. Um, this is actually particularly a project for CRSV, or conflict-related sexual violence. Okay, so we have several projects going for several years now with the Pansy Foundation, We Are Not Weapons of War, and most recently with the Mukwege Foundation. As you know, Robert Mukwege won the Nobel Prize for, he's a gynecologist, for his work to support victims of sexual violence. And so there, what we've done is several things. Is that, well, again, with the Ideas Cube, we developed in partnership with the Center for Crisis in France and the Mukwege Foundation, an AI on an ideas cube and also online that allows NGOs and local civil society organizations to interact with a legal database on international criminal law, to be able to ask questions in natural language and get answers. So we're running that in Nigeria, DRC, and also in Ukraine. All right. So that's a really cool project as well. And that way we work with libraries, but also working with libraries too is that we have a lot of different, I think really the scope for these different projects is really large, right? So we can work within libraries too to create safe spaces, space for social cohesion, and many different kinds of activities in relation to, as my colleague Julie and Camille were saying, in terms of well-being, in terms, and Camille's going to speak more about this, about book therapy or bibliotherapy, okay, which is really really exciting. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that later. So we can have specific projects also too, just in terms, we have a big project running in Europe right now. It's like libraries as bridges. And so this is working with people who are what's called third country nationals. So they're not European citizens and they're not citizens of the country. And so being able to welcome them into these library spaces in order to build links between communities and re-establish links that may have been broken, right? So there's lots of different ways of doing that too, right? So in terms of getting BSF involved, I mean, to be honest, a lot of it comes through financing, kind of working out, okay, how can we kind of get this project financed? And then once we get that going up, we're getting the partners together, creating a consortium, working together, and then turning it into a project, basically. And so, yeah, and so for Nigeria specifically, we're really lucky because we have an amazing team based in several countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And so, yeah, we'd love to speak to you more and like see what kind of connections and collaborations we can make happen. Yeah.
Great. So
Yeah.
I assume people can find you through your website.
They can, and also I put my email. I put my email
Okay,
in
good.
the chat,
Thank
and also too we can send out our emails after if people would like to speak more about
Very
this as
good.
well. And also Julie just shared BSF Tema, which is an amazing site. So basically, it's like a treasure trove of resources that we have open online to everyone, because BSF is committed to open resources, right? Open science, open data, open resources. So everything we make is free to use, free to remix. Yeah. So thanks for that, Julie.
You mentioned you're serving populations in Europe. A few years ago, there was a project that BSF was doing in the US to outfit laundromats
That's
with
right. Yeah.
resources, which always struck me as just a brilliant approach because you have these facilities that are everywhere and are populated mostly by women, mothers of small children who are not yet in school, but yet the laundry has to get done. So here they are stuck in a laundromat with kids needing or potentially benefiting from books and other kinds of resources. I thought it was very cool. Did that just sort of fade away because of the cost of doing that, or is it still going, or what?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, that's the laundromat project was great, and it's really, I guess, one of the core methodologies of BSF, which is what called outreach, right? So it's really being able to ensure that people who could benefit from libraries are able to access them, right? And so the whole point of that is to be able to go where people are, right? And so in France, all across Europe as well, in Africa, is that what we've done is that we've created these outreach programs, right? So these outreach programs, for example, could be an ideas box outside a shopping center, right? Because as everyone knows, and I don't need to explain to this to anyone, is that even though the library may actually exist, like for example, the situation in Syria is different because the library just doesn't exist anymore. It was bombed, and also to in Ukraine. But in places where libraries exist, there are lots of symbolic and cultural barriers to accessing libraries, particularly in the US. And so the idea is to break down those barriers. So BSF works a lot on what's called libraries outside the walls, or hors les murs. So that the idea is that you can have a library that isn't necessarily in a brick and mortar building, but also too, our US chapter is really active, and also invite people to check out and get in contact with libraries at borders in the US if you are based in the US. is that they have lots of projects where they work very closely with libraries in order to help libraries reach communities, right? Because sometimes librarians aren't necessarily trained on that, or sometimes they are, but they don't have the bandwidth or the time or the resources dedicated to that. So BSF USA has been working a lot, for example, for Connecticut, as an example, in working with libraries to help them reach communities so that they can come to the library and access the library, or that the library can reach them, right? So it could be like, kids coming to school, working there after school, language lessons, just accessing the library, all sorts of really amazing programs. Yeah.
Great. So a substantial barrier is, amazingly, the door of the facility itself, that many people would be uh, reluctant to enter an institution that they're not familiar with. They just really don't know what's behind that door, or what's, is there a risk? Would they be intimidated? So the idea of going out, of extending the library out in the community and lowering those kind of barriers, of interacting with people where they are, is just brilliant. And every new library of any size is a benefit. Anywhere, a little free library is a benefit, and one that's staffed with capable people, even more so. So this is just great work, uh, and your approach of finding national partners is also really smart, because there's so, especially in the areas you're working in, there's so much sensitivity to any kind of information service that could be deemed political, that it makes it hazardous, I know, or difficult to negotiate and navigate those environments. So also good work. Is
Yeah.
there
We actually have Camille actually has another project that she'd like to share, and this is the
okay,
Library
great.
of Emotions for Good, which is incredible. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I'm really sure that this one will be very interesting for you. So it's called Libraries of Emotion for Good. It's actually a project that we work in within we work in consortiums. So the lead consortium is based in France. They are called Le Fort Livre, and we have 6 other libraries in Lithuania, Poland, Slovenia, Belgium, and Tunisia. And in Ukraine, we do have 5 libraries selected in Kiev. So the concept around this project is this libraries of emotion. So what does it mean? It comes from a simple principle yet meaningful, that you don't only read to learn something or get entertained, but you can read to learn regulate your emotion. So basically, we have a classification around 6 emotions. So we have a fear, sadness, love, surprise, a joy, and something else I'm missing, love, of course. And in the library, it will be a dedicated space, and the public, I mean, the usual user of the library would go to the library and to the bookshelf and choose a book according to the emotion they want to address. But additionally, we added one human layer on this project, because we train librarians into bibliotherapy techniques. So it's a curricula of 3 kind of activity. There is psychology of emotion, there is creative writing, and shared reading. So our librarian will then do this session with their public, and the result of the session as well will be analyzed and used in university research led by Ghent University around bibliotherapy and its impact, because it's quite new in the sector of well-being therapy, something. So yeah, it's a really nice project, and the impact is very interesting, because it's really somehow simple to learn the technique, and people really open up, and it's really nice. So here it's our beautiful bibliotherapist in Kiev, Ukraine. Very proud to be trained of it. It was in December last year. And on the next picture, I want also to show something, because what's really impressive regarding Ukrainians is the way they do shows up even after the worst nights. So this winter was particularly hard with the heavy nights with heavy shelling and no electricity, no heating in inside. So on the picture, I don't know if you see, but inside the library it was like 8 degrees. So you see people are cold, and there were as well bibliotherapy session realized in the dark because there were no electricity, so they were using lamp torch. So yeah, this is really catching for me because yeah, I'm really impressed by people we work with who really shows up in any case, yes, just to be with their community, to be together, to build this social cohesion link. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. Bibliotherapy. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you coin that term, or what's the origin of that bibliotherapy?
I think it's a Roman origin because biblio refers to the book and therapy to therapy, so it's the therapy
Yeah.
around the book, and
Okay.
we did not invent it. It's somewhere in the social science, and this is why there is the research going on. And our yes partner Love for Livre created the curricula for this one, but BSF also used to do some bibliotherapy in other contexts, in other form as well, really depending on the needs of each project, each situation.
Cool. Very cool. Well, we're up on our hour. It happened really quickly. Carmack, we're going to give you the last word. Would you like to close us out with some kind of summary or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, well, but first of all, thank you very much for the questions. Thank you for coming, the participation, and th a very special thanks to Julie and Camille for your presentations and the incredible projects and work you've been doing. Yeah, just want to say if anyone has any questions or want to get in touch, is that all the projects we do, we build with partners and we co-create. And co-creation is like one of the core values that BSF has, right? So if anybody who wants to get in touch and work with us, here the focus is really on, say, crisis and emergency contexts. So we're doing lots of work there. So very interested in speaking with partners or potential collaborators too. But more broadly, for projects in the US, in Europe, in Africa or the Middle East, more than happy to work and collaborate with people and explore what we can do in order to ensure that like people do have access to education, to knowledge, and to skills, right? Regardless of the circumstances they find themselves in, whether it's under bombs and drone attacks or whether it's just the fact that internet's too expensive.
Well, I think your future is
Yeah.
assured,
Yeah.
Carmack.
Okay. Yeah.
I do not believe we're going to have fewer challenges and crises. My
Yes,
sense is
unfortunately.
that the climate is going to continue to disrupt societies and drive people out and across borders, and just general dislocation for a long time, and is very likely to increase. The chances of hundreds of millions of people on the road is just not beyond the imagination. Um, but I want to thank you and Julie and Camille for giving us this presentation and congratulate you on the great work and progress you continue to do year in and year out, and look forward to having you back to give us an update on the latest that you're doing. So um, that's pretty much going to be our hour for today. Next week we have the Institute for Self-Reliance, ILSR. This is a U.S.-based group that focuses on a kind of flip side of what we talked about today. It's not so much about recovery; it's about community building uh, with infrastructure, and that infrastructure is reliant on libraries to be complete, and how that is progressing across the country and as a model for everywhere. So I want to thank everybody. Keep on the alert for next week. We're going to take a week off, and then after that, we've got a remarkable guest coming on who you'll appreciate once we reveal our great speaker for 2 weeks from next week. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now.